I had a conversation with one of the mayors in Muskoka. I've asked to get on a conference call with all the mayors in cottage country, and we did the right thing, and we're continuing to do the right thing, make sure that we social distance and self-isolate when we can. But as we see the numbers come down, and by May the 24th, hopefully the numbers are going to continue coming down. We're going to have a heart-to-heart conversation this week with the mayors. There's only so long you can hold back taxpayers from going to their cottages. I'll give you an example in Muskoka. In Muskoka, the vast majority of taxes are paid through cottagers, and and the economy up there. When I was speaking to the mayor, people rely. The retail stores in the cottage country rely on cottagers from beginning of May, probably April, all the way through to September. That's their livelihood. If people go up to their cottage, bring their own food, don't go to the stores, stay at their cottage by May the 24th, there's only so long I can hold the big gates back from these people. They're going to want to go to their vacation property. I understand. And I think we've made the right decision about the cottagers. But as we see the numbers go down, let's just see what happens. But I'm going to have that a wholesome conversation with all the mayors in the next couple of days, and we'll see where we go from there.
And now joining me from his home office is Mayor Graydon Smith. Graydon, thanks very much for taking the time again today.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So, Graydon, we heard from Doug Ford today that he has plans to speak with you and the other Muskoka area mayors some point this week. Now, there was a bit of an about-face from the Premier today, basically saying that, he wasn't able to hold back the cottagers any longer, that they're going to start coming up to Muskoka. Now, obviously, cottagers are coming to Muskoka. That's been an issue that's been happening so far. But up until now, his message has been stay home. So I just want to hear your response on his sort of change of pace on what he's saying here, his messaging.
Well, we'll look forward to speaking with him later in the week as our collective group of mayors and talk a little bit more about that. I think where we are at right now, and I'm sure the Premier agrees, although I don't want to put words in his mouth, is that we still need to follow public health advice. So if there's an opportunity to not travel for people, I'm hoping they're going to take it. And I think the other thing is, the admission on his part that there are people here and there are likely more people to come, and with no means of stopping them, I think there's somewhat of an acceptance that we need to understand that and at the same time prepare for that, and that the cottagers need to prepare too and make sure they're being responsible.
So what kind of messaging do you want to get across to Doug Ford when you do speak to him? Do you have a certain plan in mind as to how you'd like to see this sort of safe traveling by cottagers coming to Muskoka be executed?
Well, as I said, I believe that public health messaging is the number one priority, and the safety of the public is still the number one priority. And if that message is please don't travel, then people need to be heeding that. There are some that will ignore it, for their own, comfort purposes, and others that are anxious to check on property and make sure that what they have up here is, still what they left last fall, and maybe that's a day trip up and back. But I really do think that we land on this message of please don't come unless you absolutely have to. And I think that's a relatively small number of people. And if you do, or if you're here, here's an outline of things that you should be doing to make sure that you're not having a negative impact on the community insofar as, exacerbating any of those things we've talked about earlier. About bringing your own supplies and understanding that the health system here has limitations, and making sure that you have a plan if something were to go sideways. So we'll see where it all ends up. I know that a number of people still are not traveling, and many of them have reached out to me to say, we don't want to be in your community until this is over, and when it's over, then we'll come and kind of resume normal programming.
So should people be preparing themselves for this massive influx? I mean, we May 2-4 weekend generally tends to be the time when the majority of cottagers will come up and start spending, weeks at a time, even months at a time in Muskoka. Despite all the messaging, despite all of the, the sort of pretense that's been put out so far, I'm assuming that all of that is probably going to get ignored at that point.
Well, I can't exactly say how the public will react. I think there's a few unique things occurring right now outside of the general uniqueness of this situation, which is that kids aren't in school. And so typically on a May 24 weekend, what we see is a lot of people come up, they spend the weekend at their summer cottage and make sure everything's in good shape, get things ready for when the summertime comes and they can spend even more time after the kids are out of school. Because that limitation doesn't exist right now and may not exist, I don't know if the kids will be going back at all. There may be some people that use this weekend as kind of that transition point. So I'm not exactly sure how the public, will treat this upcoming weekend, but I think it behooves us to acknowledge that we may well see more people than we've seen already. And if we do see that, then we need to make sure that they understand their social responsibility when they're in the area.
All right, Graydon, thank you so much for taking the time. We'll follow up with you following this conversation with the Premier. I do appreciate, again, you taking the time to chat with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.